Okay. Alors, bonsoir tout le monde. Bienvenue à la réunion du 12 mai 2025, la réunion du Conseil. Roll call. All members of Council are present. And if we can stand for territorial land acknowledgement.
Nous reconnaissons que nous sommes sur le territoire non cédé des Anishinaabe et les terres traditionnelles des peuples Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat et Kanyen-Kahaka. Nous reconnaissons notre obligation commune de respecter, d'honorer et de préserver ces terres et les ressources naturelles qu'elles contiennent.
Merci bien, Conseiller Lalonde. Whereas Canada is founded upon the principle that recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law, let us take a moment of personal reflection. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, car son bras sait porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. All right, thank you. Moving to item 4, additions, deletions, or amendments. I have an amendment to make a change at 22A. Let me get to it. So 22A for closed session. There is an error in S2D, a proposed or pending acquisition of land or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. That's the English version. That's an error. 2D is labor relations or employee negotiations. And so it is, the reference to 2D is accurate. The description is it was miscopied. Again, the French version is accurate, but the English version should have labor relations or employee negotiations. Any other changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I'd like a motion to approve the agenda as amended. Oh, yeah.
I wanted to add something.
So under announcements?
Is that under 20? Okay.
Yeah, put them under announcements. Thank you. All right, so going back to adoption of the agenda, motion to approve the agenda as amended. This is moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. I'll call for the vote. All in favor and pass. Thank you. Item 6, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Hearing none. Item 7, adoption of minutes. A motion to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting from April 28th, 2025. This is moved by Councillor Lauren, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Call for the vote. All in favor and passed. Thank you. Councillor Lauren?
Sorry, just for procedural, when we amended the agenda at 5, because there was an amendment to change something, do we have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the actual adoption? Or is it fine just to amend it and vote on just the amendment?
Thank you. Madame Camire?
Are you referring to tonight's agenda?
Yeah, what we just did.
Le changement que j'ai fait, on a voté pour l'adoption of the amended agenda, But did we have to vote on the amendment first?
No, it's
No.
published, it's notified, it's the agenda.
Okay, procedurally, I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss
That's right,
something.
Okay, so we did item 7. 8 presentations, we have none. 9 delegations, we have none. Item 10, consent items. All items listed under the consent items will be enacted by one motion. A majority vote is required for the adoption of consent items. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a request is made prior to the time council votes on the motion. That consent item is to be separated from the motion. And then if we do that, the separated item shall be considered immediately thereafter. So motion that all items listed under the consent items be received as presented, and this is moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And passed. Thank you. Item 11, reports from departments and council committees. 11A, summary of purchases, awards over 25,000 report CSAS FS 2025-06. That council receives report dated May 12th for information purposes. Questions, anything to add on that, Monsieur Godin?
Non, merci, Monsieur le Maire.
Questions and comments, members of council? Councillor Armstrong.
Just a couple of simple ones here. From the surplus or deficit we find ourselves in at this time of the year, can we forecast any potential transfers or amendments or whatever of funds that may be required before the end of the fiscal year? And I look at that because in my career, we would be looking at longer lead time items that we'd like to have influenced by the end of the fiscal year.
Monsieur Godin, just to clarify your question, Councillor Armstrong, so you're looking at last fiscal year, correct? In
Yeah.
terms of our situation. based
Yeah,
on
and
last-
they show surpluses and whatever. So we've allocated some, but can we also look forward to see what we may want to do
If there is such a surplus.
if there are a significant surplus? Obviously, minor surpluses will tend to cover themselves over, but can we look forward at this point?
I think during the, correct me if I'm wrong, it could have been at the counties that we had this discussion, but I know that during the budget process, there was some discussions of potential directions if there were to be surpluses. But correct me if I'm wrong, Monsieur Godin.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Bonsoir, Chairman du Conseil. So the short answer is yes, we can, technically. It's always, our regular process, if you will, is to come later on in the year to present council with our year-end reports, where we do present some different options as far as if we have a surplus, we would recommend to do this and that with it, and it's an opportunity for council as well to request some things. I would say that this early in the year, it would be difficult to project if we will have a surplus or a deficit. Sometimes when we do finish projects, we do recognize some savings or some potentially a surplus there. And it does happen that we bring back reports to council to request more funding for additional projects or initiatives like that. So the short answer is yes, it can be done. It's just not part of our regular process.
Councillor Lauren?
And it's just that I think I may know where you're going with this a little bit, is that there's a report at H that talks about using surplus money for road repair if there's an anticipated surplus, or if there's a surplus at the end of the year. I have a big problem with surpluses because a surplus for not doing a project is one thing. You carry over the surplus to the next year and you do the project. But surpluses, and especially significant surpluses, could mean that we projected the project incorrectly, or we taxed at a higher rate anticipating that cost, and therefore now we got a $400,000 surplus when we could have had a 3% lower tax increase the year before. So I hope that we're not getting into a position where we are overtaxing and using that surplus throughout the year to do projects that were unanticipated throughout the year and having that expectation. So I don't know if that's where you were going with it, but that's kind of where I am. I would prefer us to be a lot closer to the break-even line than to sit there and have a significant surplus year over year. But that's just me.
Thank you. Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Mayor. So your point is well taken, and in the actual report, well, I guess we can speak to it when we get there, but it's also a question of not wanting to deplete our reserves if we don't need to. That's kind of why that if we have a surplus, we'll use it, was added there. And just for historical reference, in the last few years, at least, I don't think we've had an operational surplus of more than 400,000 or 500,000, and that's on a $30 million budget. So I think we do budget pretty accurately, and that we don't tax where we don't need to.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, through the budgeting process, I mean, we're looking at every area where we could reduce when we're going through those 2 days, and so I would suspect that we wouldn't do that. So I'm glad to hear that. Councillor Deakin?
I've been expecting the periodic financial reports to be coming any meeting now. Is that in the next couple of meetings that we would get an update that shows the revenue and expenses tracking?
Monsieur Godin?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, that's going to be at the second meeting of May, so next meeting.
All right. Just one additional question, Monsieur Bourgon, specifically on the list of the items there. I just had a question for clarification on the Notre Dame storm sewer rehab. The total budget is just short of 700,000, and in the split, I think it speaks to 289,000 as a 50-50 split for Russell. I don't necessarily need an answer right now, but if I look at a 50-50 split on the actual budget, it would be more like 200. Or maybe I'm misquoting. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that those numbers are accurate. I think I answered my own question here. The 50-50 split is the 289. Ça sonne bien si le projet est 699 700 000, ça devrait être plutôt 350 000, c'est ça? Si on fait 50-50, je voulais juste chercher à comprendre.
Il y a sûrement eu des dépenses allouées en 2023 aussi.
OK, c'est ça que je pensais. Je voulais juste confirmer. OK. Fait que ce qui nous reste pour cette année, c'est le 2,89.
Ben, pour qui était pour 2024. Là, cette année, en 2025, on a un nouveau budget. Là, de
OK, ouais, je comprends. OK, c'est beau, merci. OK, anything else on this item? Okay, moving forward, summary of sponsorship, advertising, and donations for 2024, report CSASFS 2025-08. The council receives the report dated May 12, 2025 for information purposes. So thank you. This is a great report. I'm excited to see that there is a difference in sponsorship and advertising, and I think that there is a strategy now. I know that I'm going to be participating in a meeting that we're looking at really developing that side of it, the sponsorship and advertising piece. So I'm excited to see that moving forward. I think that's all good. I think there was a large increase in donations. I think that's mostly based on the subdivision transfers. So I think that explains that itself. Anything else to add, Monsieur Godin, on this?
No, merci, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, just if I could just get an explanation as to the subdivision transfers counting as donations to the municipality?
Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's a great question. So basically, it's accounted as a donation, given that we're accepting assets, so it's increasing our net value in our financial statements. So basically, it's the $13.4 million value of roads now, or roads and other infrastructure. Now, it's a donation because our asset value has increased by that much, and it does represent an increase to our annual requirement, and we'll have to maintain those assets. So moving forward, it represents a cost, but accounting-wise, it is considered a donation.
That's good. Councillor Armstrong?
A couple of points. One was transit bus shelter. Did somebody build a transit bus, or was it just transferred to us?
No, we had that right by the arena, in front of the
Mhm.
arena, and so there is some advertising revenue that was coming from
Oh, it's
that.
the advertising. Okay.
I'm thinking Russell too, there's one.
Russell as well, yeah.
That's, okay, now I understand. And next one goes back to the donations for the subdivision transfers. I'm assuming that all of these subdivision transfers are considered in our asset management plan ongoing from as soon as we receive them?
That's correct, and I think that's the purpose of recording them like in
Okay.
an accounting format, Monsieur Godin.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, puts them in our books.
Okay, that's fine. Is this increase, it's a fair number, so is this increase, the donations, are they actually higher or lower or about average? Could we expect to see something of this figure, inflated, of course, every year?
So just a couple of points, and please correct me if I'm wrong. This is an accounting value, and so it's not, it has an impact on our expenses in terms of asset management. And then that depends on what subdivisions get turned over to the municipality every year. So, Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's right. So it's not going to be a steady value every year. It depends on, like Mr. Mayor said, when the subdivisions are transferred to us.
Merci. Any other questions? Councillor Deacon?
I'm not quite seeing the logic to have the donations lumped with the asset-specific donations, especially knowing that it brings online the asset management planning aspect of it as well. So I think I mentioned this in an email to staff. Just want to say that I would love to see those two separated out in a report like this, because they tell quite a different story, both financially as well as from the community perspective.
Sure, I think that's a fair comment, Monsieur Godin. Is that something that we can do moving forward?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think it's a very fair comment. So we did receive your email, and I'll be speaking with our Director of Corporate Services to see how we can implement that change. I don't think it should be an issue.
Okay, great, thank you. Nothing else? Okay, moving to item C, 2025 final tax rate that the council received report CSASFS 2025-09 dated May 12, 2025, and approved the proposed bylaw establishing the 2025 final tax rates for all categories, which sets a tax increase of 7.1 as approved by the council within the 2025 budget discussion. So this was previously approved during our budgeting process. I think it's important to remember for anyone watching this that the 7.1 increase is on only on the municipal portion of the taxes. So on a resident's typical tax bill for the year, about 48% goes to the municipality, 39% goes to the counties, and about 13% to school boards. So it's not, it doesn't make the amount insignificant, but it does have an impact on it. So just wanted to highlight that. Anything else to add on this, Monsieur Godin?
No, merci, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any questions, comments? Councillor Armstrong?
Just one thing, when I first looked at it, I had a little bit of questioning the understanding, but assessments have not been redone since 2018. We had that in our
That's
last
correct.
meeting. Could that be indicated somewhere? Because that explains in many cases why we actually had a tax rate decrease, but in some cases we get a tax increase. It has that effect when your assessment is not, when the assessment is not changing.
I'm not sure I fully understand. Maybe Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Mayor. Councillor Armstrong brings a good point. So when there is that, when there's a reevaluation done by impact, which was done in 2016 last time, it's always phased in over 4 years. So when we are in that situation, every year you will see a tax rate decrease before we increase it. And we no longer do this, well, we haven't done this since 2020, since there hasn't been any reevaluations. But another factor is also the ratios, so tax ratios, be it for residential, commercial, and industrial. Those ratios are controlled by they're approved by the counties of Prescott-Russell,
Yeah.
which is why we have to wait until spring before adopting these rates. So sometimes there will be some slight adjustment to ratios, which will cause a decrease or an increase depending which ratio was adjusted. But that's all taken into account here. That's why the tax rate doesn't increase by exactly 7.1%. We increase 7.1% after those initial adjustments are made.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Armstrong is looking to see if we can somehow put a notice on that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And where would you see that notice, Councillor Armstrong?
It could even simply be, each one of those lines have a different shading and have a little legend on the bottom saying, these effects are because we've had an assessment increase now coming in, and prior to that, we didn't have it, or it could also indicate that there are significant, enough to show up here, tax ratio changes at the county's level.
Merci. So if we're receiving this report, so I guess this is an action that could be done for the next year. Is that something that makes sense, Monsieur Godin? Is that possible?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. So I can share those comments with the finance department. We do touch on how the ratios impact the tax rates, but we can definitely clarify. I'll share the comments, and we can look to kind of make that paragraph a bit clearer and to include all that information.
Merci. Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Laura?
And I think it'll be extremely important to add an asterisk the year that the impact assessments come out again, because you're going to see a significant change, I think, in my opinion, on it. Because if we were to maintain at the same tax rate, then what will happen is we're going to get a significant bump of funds that come in. We don't need all of those funds to operate the business. So you're going to probably see the rate change down and then a rate change back up a little bit from there, based on the fact that there's going to be that, the values of the properties that would have increased significantly from 2016 to 2026, we'll say, whenever that is, so 10-year gap. So that rate will definitely be changed, and that's going to have to be pointed out or an asterisk with a line underneath on a going forward basis to say, well, why was there that significant change in 2026? Well, that's the reason. There was no change for 10 years, and then it went down. So that tax rate is now significantly lower because the values have increased so much, and we don't need we shouldn't need that additional income. Not that we couldn't use it, but I don't think it'd be the right thing to do.
No, we wouldn't do that for sure. Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. So yes, for sure, and I'll have to send Joyce from MPAC some kudos, because you understood exactly how that works.
Yeah, exactly. OK, alors on tombe à l'item D, que le Conseil reçoive le rapport CSAS-FS 2025-10, daté du 12 mai 2025, et adopte le règlement proposé établissant un nouvel horaire régulier des réunions du Conseil qui auront lieu à chaque année pour l'adoption des budgets annuels, et que la première date pour les sessions budgétaires soit le 23 octobre 2025 et la journée suivante, au besoin, soit 2 semaines suivant la présentation de la première ébauche du budget. Question, commentaire, ou, pardon, Monsieur Godin?
Non, merci, Monsieur Maire.
Nothing to add. So just to point out, this modification has been brought because there is a county council meeting on the Wednesday, which would have been the date that we had originally scheduled for day one of budget discussions. And so I would not be available because I'm at county, so it's going to be the Thursday, Friday, correct? Yeah. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Lauren?
And just be that the email invites will have to be updated
That's correct,
once
yeah.
this goes through.
Any other comments? No? Seeing none? Thank you. All right, moving to item E, Embrun Ribfest. The council receives report PIC 2025-04 dated May 12th, 2025, and approve the proposed recommendation for the road closure as outlined in the report. So the key here, just to let you know, this is a fundraising event to support the development or the maintenance of the building, the church building here in Embrun, which is of historical value and cultural value here. This was traditionally done through their Souper de la Moisson And this year, they're trying this new approach to do this Rib Fest that'll be open to the entire community to celebrate this fundraiser. Anything to add, Madame Bordeaux?
I just want to point out that the street will be closed, yes, but everyone has access to their driveways, so nobody is not having access to their property.
Merci. Question, commentaire. Councillor Lorne.
Yeah, do the improvements to Notre Dame have any impact on this at all, or is that in another section of?
It's a completely different section, but Monsieur
Completely.
Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So yeah, it's another section entirely.
Just making sure.
Councillor Deacon.
Yeah, I'd like to understand the degree to which the township's responsible for security at the event versus the providers, the event organizers providing their own security. I get a little nervous now around road events.
Sure. I'll let Madame Bordeaux explain, but because it's on a county road, it's going to be Township that oversees that security. Madame
The
Bordeaux?
security?
Well, we oversee the road closure, but we don't oversee the security of the event. So we do close the roads, and we do have people to set up barricades beforehand, and our vehicles are used for security measures. And also to allow emergency services, if need be, to access the area. So that's why we're not putting cement blocks or something like that. So this way, we can just move the vehicle, let the emergency vehicle go by. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, moving forward. Thank you. Item F, Noise Exemption Report, PIC 2025-13. That council receives this report dated May 12, 2025, and approve as recommended in this report the noise exemption request submitted by the Association des loisirs communautaires d'Embrun Incorporée from 11 o'clock until 1 a.m. Friday, June 13th into Saturday, June 14th, 2025, and from 11 o'clock p.m. until 1 a.m. on Saturday, June 14th, 2025 into Sunday, June 15th, 2025 to accommodate outside music events. So this is an event that's been happening each year. It's loosely lined up with the Saint Jean-Baptiste celebrations that we have in Quebec. It's also attached to a major community baseball tournament that we have every year here in Embrun. A lot of the local families do that. We did have a resident that communicated, I believe, with all council members with some concerns. And so, Madame Bordeaux, anything to add specifically to that?
Yes, I did respond to the resident. Well, for the noise from previous years, like last year, we only received one call. And the resident, when that resident learned that it was the Celebrant,
Yeah.
retracted their complaints because they supported the event. So, so this resident, I informed that if council approved the noise exemption, I would contact the organizers, ask them to maybe redirect the speakers for the evening music. Also, there were numerous concerns on the email, so I also inquired with Recreation for the garbage on site and the disposal of such. So Madame Guittard informed me that her staff takes care of that throughout the day. So most of the concerns that were addressed through this email. So I know that she requested that we do decibel readings, but we're not equipped to do that. And it's not the intention of the department at this time to start using decibel readers. And so all this information was conveyed to the resident. And I haven't received an email back, so.
Okay, so just to confirm, there was the issue of noise, there was an issue of litter, which you've addressed, and there was a concern about potentially over-serving and people drinking and driving, but this we confirm that everyone that's serving alcohol has Smart Serve certification, and I know that we work closely with our detachment here in OPP,
Yes.
and they will be patrolling.
Every time
as they
we
do.
have special events, we inform all our emergency services. There was also a communication side of things. We usually give all the, sorry, I'm lost for words.
En français, c'est beau.
Les rencontres, suivant les rencontres du conseil, on donne toujours un aperçu des choses qui ont été approuvées par le conseil. Donc, sur notre site web, il y a tout ce qui a été approuvé. Mais on peut aussi faire une mention comme quoi que cet événement-là se passe, puis qu'une motion ou une résolution est approuvée, si elle est approuvée, pour l'exemption sur le bruit.
OK, merci beaucoup. Question, commentaire, membre du conseil, conseiller Armstrong?
Yeah, I have a bit of an interest in this. I live only 200 meters from the site. And I know that we've had some comments, and I get comments from my neighbors when I'm out walking my dog. But the question has always been, some years, the noise exemption seems to work just fine. I don't have any problem with the extended noise exemption, and I don't think any of my neighbors have actually complained about the length of time. It's a matter of sometimes the noise pops up in some years and down on other years. You also get some questions if a family nearby now has a young child, and then the child is woken up in the evening. So if you can, as you say, turn the speakers some other way or take the level down a little bit, it would certainly be appreciated by me and all of my neighbors, and because it will be within the area at the time what we would consider tolerable. Now, we all live across from the park. We bought our houses there. We know that such things happen. It's just occasionally we get things a little much. And you don't live all that far away either, Ms. Mayor. You probably hear it sometimes too.
I practice the if you can't beat them, join them theory. No, but we do hear it as well. But again, this is, like I said, it's a big community event in terms of the ball tournament that happens at that time. So there is a connection. I know of a lot of people that come into town because they know people, because they grew up here and so on. So it is a nice event for that, and it is 2 nights, and I know it could be, and so I appreciate that we can try to find a way to accommodate the residents' concerns and go from there. Any other comments? Councillor Deakin?
Yeah, I really appreciated in the email that we received the reference to a balance, right? And we're a small community, we're a growing community, but this event, like you said, Mr. Mayor, has been planned for many, many years by volunteers in the community, people who are also likely your neighbors and Councillor Armstrong's neighbors as well. And so that idea of balance, even though this is an exemption that we're looking at, it doesn't mean that they want to crank it to the skies, right? And I also just want to commend administration on the part of that proactive communication aspect, because I think that makes a big difference when somebody knows what's coming. They're not surprised in the middle of the night. Maybe they make a plan to put some earplugs in that night and yeah, just allow one of these wonderful events that happens in our community every year to carry on.
Yeah, and I think that's where the piece about communication, and maybe we put that in our calendar of events going on, even though it's not technically a township, but it's on township property, so that residents could see that, you know, in the weeks leading up to it, that they will be happening. Okay, great. Any other comments? No? Seeing none? Great. We're moving to item G. I'm going to be asking to separate this item, but we can move ahead and discuss this right now. So that council receive report ISPW 2025-06 dated May 16th, 2025, and select an option of the report on how to finalize the urban tree bylaw. So I'll throw in a few comments first, and I'll give it back to Richard and then open it for council. So first of all, let me start by thanking all the residents that took time to send Township, to send all of us feedback. Big thanks to staff for managing this file over the past few years. And so, from my perspective, I have two sides that I'm struggling with, and a little bit like another file that we've dealt with in the past. So on one side, I support the idea of protecting and growing our tree canopy. This bylaw, in my opinion, unfortunately only deals with, this bylaw unfortunately only deals with land within our villages, and so it doesn't impact the majority of the township. On the other side, we have this thing where we as a township are asking to meddle into people's private property. So I struggle with that a lot, and so with that in mind, I think if I go back to the goal here of growing our tree canopy, I believe that we should focus on regulation around public or semi-public land. So our township land, for example, I think we should put some sort of rules around that where we need to do something around that. I'm not sure if it's possible, but look at the requirements for municipal or subdivision-owned lands, boulevards, right-of-ways, and so on. So implement a tree management plan for the municipality or municipally owned properties. I think that's where we should be looking at. I like the education piece to encourage tree planting. And then other things like what we do right now already is our partnership with South Nation Conservation, where we have free tree giveaways. And so work around some sort of education around that and encourage people to take advantage of that and encourage them to plant trees on their own properties. I know that we all received probably the same emails and comments that I received throughout. And the big kind of negative that kept coming back was, this is my property, and who are you to tell me what I can and can't do on my property? And there is merit in that argument, especially when there are some of the examples that were cited. So I'm struggling with this. I'm more leaning towards something where it's specific to the municipal lands, but we'll open that for discussion. Before I throw it to council, Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So based on the comments that staff received over the last couple of months on that topic, I felt prudent to gauge the pulse of council, just so that myself and my team is working on the right direction for this either bylaw or a policy, as was mentioned by Mr. Mayor just earlier. So really, today I'm seeking direction from council that do we keep status quo and I complete the bylaw as presented this winter? Do I prepare a policy, another type of bylaw that's more permissive or without permits or maybe without fees? Or we just abandon entirely that topic? So
right.
I'm seeking direction from council.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bourgon. All right, members of council, starting with Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I've looked at the bylaw, and as you know, I'm new on the Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee, and I've had to read through this bylaw a couple times now, and I have to think about it from my own philosophy. And my own general philosophy is, if you cut down a tree for whatever reason, then you should plant a tree. And no, that doesn't grow canopy, but at least it means from a private point of view, we're maintaining the canopy. And we'll get into, as you mentioned, the township growing the tree canopy. So if we do that and we have some sort of a permit system, my philosophy, the permit would only exist to ensure that we get a new tree where one is cut down. All of that said, and many people, I've had discussions, in fact, this afternoon with some residents, what is a tree? And we can work that one out a little later, I think, but it would be a very restricted definition in my point of view of what a tree is. So if it's not a natural native tree to this part of Ontario, I wouldn't consider it a tree. If there is a fee and somebody plants a tree, my personal point of view, at least most of the fee would be refunded because the tree has been planted, the objective of the bylaw has been accomplished. And if there isn't, then the fee would go into a fund, reserve fund, that would allow us to expand the township canopy. The fee would be a minimal fee, just the cost of what it would be to administer and to ensure that another tree is planted. The violation provisions in the existing bylaw are excessive, in my point of view. I mean, they go up to a $100,000 fine, which I'm not even sure is actually legal. But anyway, it was excessive. So all that put together, and considering the fact that we actually have some limited powers in this because the Municipal Act does not provide us with too many tools here. There are a lot of exemptions. I would say that we would send this back to option 2, a much more flexible bylaw, focus on the front yard, education and guidelines, and limit the permits to what is necessary to administer the bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Any other comments? Councillor Deakin.
Appreciating Councillor Armstrong's comments. This bylaw is tricky because it's not living in isolation. It's relational to a lot of programming and a lot of policy that's already in place, as well as, I think, some policy and programming that council is, I'll speak for myself, that I would be hopeful to be seeing in the next little while in terms of township trees, township property, and what the township is doing, developers, development properties, and what happens when a property changes its land use. And, of course, hearing from a lot of the residents that those are their greatest concerns in addition to clear cutting. I like the simplicity of what Councillor Armstrong is suggesting. I was also sitting this afternoon with some very dedicated residents on the issue, and so I'm still percolating off of that, and I have, again, all of those other programs and policies. I am not quite ready to either advance what's been proposed or stop it in its tracks. So I just want to say I appreciate the direction of Councillor Armstrong's thinking, and I also landed on number 2 because it also gives us more time and ability to send in comments to administration as that work is done.
Thank you, Councillor Deakin. Anyone else with comments? Conseiller Lalonde.
Yes. So I was on the phone at 4:30 taking calls still on the subject of the tree bylaw, and a couple of points that were reiterated from emails that we got went along the lines of with restrictive permits and penalties, can you even prove, do we have any data to show that this helps to grow the number of trees in a municipality or a township, or does it actually scare people from not going anywhere near the idea of looking at permits, or, is it actually going to encourage, is it going to increase the number of trees in a town, or might it actually decrease the number of trees in a town that people will be too afraid to plant, knowing that in a few years' time? These are the comments that were made to me, that someone will come around if they have to trim or prune or cut or move, and that now they'll be involved in a situation with an arborist or someone that has to check that tree first. I mean, the conversation ended with what Councillor Deakin mentioned, and this was by a very notable member of the community, long-standing member, been involved in a lot of community activity, who said, we just like to see collaboration and education. We don't actually want to be told what we're allowed to do or not allowed to do on our property, but we do understand the idea of the thing, which is to promote, the planting of trees and the expanding of the canopy. We just would rather see it done through the community, maybe by the community and collaboratively, rather than through permits and fines. So that's the gist of what I got in many emails and then at the last minute today in a phone call. So I tend to navigate towards option 2 as well, on that basis that it talks about education and it talks about flexibility. People put pools in their backyards that have to move trees out, but the benefit of it is for their families and kids and neighbors, and sometimes trees have to be moved. The flip side of that, though, is that we've had residents who take trees out just for the sake of taking them out, and that's a shame. I've watched that happen in the village of Russell over the last 3 years. They weren't posing any threat to the home or the property. They were just taken down. Really, what it amounted to was a nuisance factor. So a bit of a conundrum here in that sense for me, and that's why I think we should be doing something. I think option 2 points to that. I think we really need to get into the idea of educating, and maybe it starts with what the mayor said, with if we can get our own municipality to be following some guidelines and advice on getting trees put down on our own public property. We have parks that are barren right now still. I think of the park over at Old Town West. It's a huge piece of property with hardly nary a tree on it. It would be nice that if maybe Township could lead the way in that education piece, and that we could work something out with option 2. I think that's what I would be interested in. Thank you.
Merci. Conseiller Lauren.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with a lot of the items that were discussed. I got the same types of comments from residents, emails and phone calls. As drafted, I think it's a reportable type of a bylaw where we enforce by people reporting their neighbors, and we're just pitting neighbors against neighbors in that scenario, and I don't think that's healthy for the community. It'll then just lead into more issues, I think, rather than the collaborative approach. So I don't like that. I don't like the enforcement options that were available in that, and the powers that were being distributed within the bylaw. So for me, I think we need to take a step back, rethink it, prepare something new, whether it's more flexible or whatnot is fine. Focus on education guidelines. I don't like the permit factor. Watch out for the having a requirement to contract out a certified arborist if you want to cut something down in your own yard. I mean, is that going to happen? Really? Like, realistically, is someone going to go and do that? Probably not. And what does that do for us? I think education is key, and you cut one down, you put one in. That's the key. Focus on the township being leaders in this, and if we have land that we can plant more trees, then that's fantastic. I know there's a lot of tree planting programs in the community right now, which is great. I was speaking to one family that put in thousands of trees recently on their property, so as part of the South Nation program. So I think that's great. I think we should also, though, if we're going to update this bylaw, that we send it back to committee for their comments before it comes back to council. I think it's important to get that recommendation from the committee, because that's really what they're there for, is to provide advisory to us. So that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Councillor Deakin?
I just wanted to underscore one of Councillor Lalonde's comments regarding the leading by example piece, and I really believe that as stewards of land, as the township in every sense, anything that comes to us with regard to land use, we should be leading by example and looking at our strategic plan every single time and asking, administration asking itself, is this in line with all of these objectives that we're trying to achieve? And again, that's why this is more of a web than a single bylaw. It has to fit, and when you advance something like this, we have to, I always go back to, there's one strategic objective about empathy and having and holding empathy for those residents that want to be able to make decisions on their own property as well. So again, it's just an example that this isn't in isolation. To Councillor Lorraine's point, the Environmental Advisory Committee has been working on this for a long time, especially in the last couple of weeks. I believe that countless hours of review have gone into this, and I'd just like to also acknowledge that. My third piece is the option itself. Option number 2 does mention no permits. And while I'm interested in looking at a more flexible option, I'm not which number 2 presents to us as a council. The idea of no permits, I'm not ready to give direction to administration one way or the other in terms of not having permits associated with this bylaw. I'm new, but my belief is that if you remove the permitting aspect entirely, it's no longer a bylaw, but more of a guideline. So just wanted to point that out, that we may need to make a change to the direction that's provided to administration.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. A couple of additional, or maybe a summary, I think is better here. So this is what I'm hearing, is that generally there seems to be a direction to go towards number 2. When I look at number 2, my only struggle, and Councillor Deacon mentioned her concern there, my struggle is if I look at option number 2, we have front yard there, and then we have education guidelines and no permits. And so whether it's the front yard or the backyard, my thoughts on private property are still private property, unless we're talking about the road allowance that belongs to Township. That's a different story. Or if we're talking about, at creation of the home, of adding a tree at the beginning. So I'm not sure that I'm willing to say number 2, because number 2, the way it's written there, I'm still not sure. And Councillor Deacon is kind of around the permit piece, is concerned about that. So we are going to come back to this, but Monsieur Bourgon, thoughts from you, Monsieur Godin, in terms of the direction that you're getting from council? I know it's not 100% clear, but I think we have a direction.
Well, at least I know I won't focus more on what was presented, if approved that way by council. So I have at least a work frame or un sandbox. Je sais au moins dans comment m'orienter là, pour préparer quelque chose de nouveau au conseil.
Okay, can I maybe just get a pulse from the rest of council around those 2 points, i.e. the front yard piece and the permit piece? Just to maybe further kind of give more clarity around that without taking a vote at this stage, but just any members of council want to comment on that? The permit side, Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, in getting a permit for something here, I would do something that is as simple as possible, maybe even a form online where you fill it out and you say, I want to remove this tree or these trees, and then later on you simply send a photo back afterwards, said, I removed the trees and here's what I put in instead. And that would be the simple way. And of course, we're not going to catch everybody. But we don't catch every speeder, we don't catch every person who jaywalks, we don't, all of this. But we will have some basis for an increase in our tree canopy. As for front and back, I don't have any specific opinion on that. Personally, I would do it both front and back, but that's me. Whether that's actually the best thing for the township as a whole, I'm not certain of. And the final comment in things is the South Nation has tree giveaways and stuff like that. If somebody needs a tree and they can get it from South Nation Tree Giveaway, they're always native trees. They can go right ahead and get them from there if they wish, from my point of view.
So just to clarify, we do work with South Nation, and so we match their grant, and so that's how we're able to do a fairly large tree giveaway every year. And so that's coming up right now, and we'll be promoting it. I'll be right with you. So just quickly, just double check something. In terms of the online form ID, and I'm just trying to elaborate the piece here. So online form to get some sort of permit, and so you take a picture. I like the simplicity of it. Just a question for staff, and I don't know if you have an answer to that, but as soon as we do some sort of permit where township has to approve something, are we not getting in a position of additional liability if something goes wrong? Monsieur Bourgon?
Yes, in a way. We need to keep in mind that township, we always have that 1%. I would need to get back to council with appropriate answer.
Okay.
But definitely, any type of permit, that means more staff time to manage.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's no fee, we need to understand that it's going to be covered by other means.
Okay, that's a fair comment. Okay, any other comments? Councillor Deacon, sorry, coming back to you. I'll be right.
The tricky thing, I did submit comments pointing to the front yard, and I'd seen that done in other jurisdictions where they focused on front yard only. We're living in a community where you have in the village residences that country bumpkins like me would call a postage stamp in terms of property size, and there are some fairly substantial properties that are forested within the settlement boundaries as well. So I think it bears considering front yard exclusively, especially depending on how rigorous the bylaw is. If there are fees involved, are you paying a fee per tree? Or, if you need to take out a stand in the backyard, for example, that can get quite complicated and expensive as well. So that was kind of the thinking that I had when I submitted that comment after seeing it done in other jurisdictions, as well as the reality that the front yard is where the most collective benefit is gained from having tree cover. You're mitigating heat for pedestrians walking in the front. You're beautifying, you're slowing down traffic. Yes, trees on streets slow down traffic. We're always talking about how we would love more ways to do that in our community. Well, trees play a huge role in deterring traffic from speeding. So that was the focus of my comment to the administration on a front yard focus. That said, I'm not an expert on tree bylaws by any means, and so if there's a rationale to treat or look at the whole property, I would be interested to hear that. It's also difficult with infill developments and the reality that significant changes in land use that are prompting tree removal or changes, that transforms an entire property as well. So when I say front yard, frankly, I'm thinking about the detached home with a tree on the front yard. It does get more complex when we're thinking about multi-residential infill developments and what that means for the tree canopy overall as well.
Thank you, Councillor Deacon. Councillor Armstrong?
Just one addition. Infill developments, we are, one of the restrictions we have, if it's an infill development, we cannot prohibit or regulate the destruction or injuring of trees for any sort of development. If it requires a building permit, a plan of subdivision, or a site plan, then it's not permitted for us to regulate. And that's a significant issue now, today, because there are many people that will want to redevelop some of their properties with the new policies coming from the Ontario government to encourage additional accommodation.
Mr. Bourgon, do you understand, is that accurate from your perspective?
Well, what we ask for redevelopment or site plan subdivision, we ask for a landscaping plan, so at least to plant new trees.
But not the
and-
removal. We can't control the removal.
No, but we ask that if they can maintain with the
Yeah.
redevelopment as many trees or existing trees. But definitely it's by the landscaping plan really that we can try to.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lauren?
If we're talking permits, I didn't even think of the potential liability of the township for providing approvals or in the form of permits to allow people to take down the trees, whether they be in their front yard or backyard. I'm not in favor of a permit cost to the resident to do so, understanding that they would also have to buy a tree, replace it, put it in. If it's a pass through where they put up a deposit and then once they put the tree in, they get their money back, then I guess so. But I'm worried about the liability factor. So I think that needs to be examined if it hasn't already. Because right now we don't have a bylaw in place, and if we're adding more work for staff to go through a permit process, we're adding increased workload to those people with no compensation on the backside. That doesn't make sense to me, especially if there's a liability factor that could be included there. And what would that look like? Does that increase our insurance policy? Does that, so there's many factors that come into play in that. And, like you said, we're not gonna get everybody. And, I would tend to probably say most people won't even come for a permit. They're just gonna cut their tree down. They're gonna, play, well, I didn't know, and then what do you do, right? How do you go and do it? We're not proactively going into properties, so it's going to be a reactive process, and I don't know. That's a tough one, and I don't think that at this point, at least from the bylaw that's in place, I can't support that, and I would support more of the 2, even part of 3 from a training and education program perspective. So,
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Whatever we decide and however this ends up, as this item is separated for a decision after, I think it's important that we show a direction, a clear enough direction for any resident that's concerned. And I think Councillor Lalonde alluded to it earlier on, where people may be preemptively cutting trees because they were worried that we were having something coming up. So if the direction, and I feel there is a direction from this council to kind of stay away from that, then I think we need to make that part clear, if nothing else, tonight. And so keep that in mind. Councillor Deakin, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I'm hoping this will be my last comment, but I must say regarding Councillor Armstrong's last scenario, and absolutely we are a community that either needs to intensify or sprawl. Hopefully I'm on I really want to see more density in our core, more walkable cores, more livable cores, while doing what we can to maintain tree canopy. And I was looking at a site plan today where the designer had set out really tactfully where trees would be removed, where trees would be added, and where trees would be left untouched as they put in a multi-residential. And my understanding is that between, following construction between 6 months and a year, the majority of those trees that had been identified in the site plan as remaining were gone. And we don't have a bylaw right now to be compensated for that, to put funds into a reserve, or to have those trees replanted in any sense. And that was a side yard. If you're looking at a multi-residential, it was the side, of that property. And I cite that, but we need a piece of policy here that does have some teeth, where you say that you're going to do something in your site plan, and you should be held to that. or compensating or replanting accordingly, right? So just that scenario, I think, could play out in a few different ways, and we certainly want to dissuade folks from being disingenuous.
Thank you. But again, we're talking about private property, so that it goes back to that. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, so I'm going to ask the question to Mr. Bogon. I don't know if you're going to have the answer or not, but for the scenario that was just presented by Councillor Deacon from a site plan perspective, do we not have accountability built into the site plan, where if they say they're going to do X and they do X, then great, but if they do Y, that there's repercussions to that?
Mr. Bogon?
Mr. Mayor, so yes, until, site plan's completed. If it happened, like, let's say if there's changes to the landscaping plan years down the road, well, then it's more complicated for us to
Yeah, it
act
becomes,
on it. But if it's during construction or at that point of the full drawing process, yes, we have more control, I guess.
so when the project is complete, then it's private property and the resident could do
That's
whatever.
it, then it's difficult to, we'll have, there's major things that we can get back to the property owner, but it's more difficult when everything's approved and all securities has been released.
Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, but on a site plan for multi-residential, as an example, I think that was the project we were talking about, a multi-residential project. In those scenarios, I think we need to ensure that there's a timeline on that. If we're providing any type of accommodation to that property, that they respect that timeline for whatever that period of time is, because that's what they've asked for, right? That's why they got approval for that project. So I think we need to revisit that, whether that's through the provincial policy statement or through a township policy or bylaw that needs to be adhered to ensure that from a site plan perspective that these, I'll say, proponents of the project maintain the integrity of what they've submitted right from the get-go, and not, well, I've put it up and now, we've had that in the past where we had multi-residential properties like townhouses or row houses or whatever, and they were single occupancy for a year, and then all of a sudden after the year, after they got their security back, they made it two residences in one. We kind of fixed that loophole in that process. Well, I think we need to do similar here then from a site plan perspective. If that's occurring, we need to fix that. And I think I'll leave that to staff to
Mr.
to come
Bogon?
back to deal with.
The point taken, and we'll review our the site plan process and agreement.
Okay, so we've had a good discussion so far. Any kind of final thoughts from anyone that I didn't have a chance to talk to? Monsieur Lalonde?
So I'm just going to throw this out. It's a half-baked idea, but with the thought of coming to focus in on option 2 with alterations, and the comment made by Councillor Lauren earlier about the opportunity maybe to get advice or comments from the advisory committee, would there be any value in asking the environmental advisory committee to look at what's been talked about here? Because they're hearing it for the first time tonight, and digest some of this on the basis that we're sort of in the middle of the two options, and to come back with a recommendation on that basis? Or is that a little late in the game? I'm just wondering whether there would be some value in that.
So Councillor Lalonde, I'll give it to you in a sec, Councillor Lauren. Councillor Lalonde, a couple of points to make. First of all, it's never too late to give opinions and ideas. And if it creates a better result, then it's a great timing. I want to correct, because I do believe that the Environmental Committee has been involved with this process all along, and they have been putting work. So to clarify that we would just send this back to them, I think I like the idea of that. My only concern in doing anything without having any kind of resolution here is the concern for the residents that are still worried about where we're going with this. So to have some sort of direction, I think we have a general direction, and Monsieur Bourgon, correct me if I'm wrong, of the feeling from council here as to what this should look like in the ballpark. And then possibly with the idea to bring it back to the environmental committee, look at some additional options, and then to come back to council. So what I'm seeing here is more of a deferral than an actual selection of a decision. Having said that, I am concerned that I want to send the message out to residents that had concerns and they may have been preemptively cutting trees, not to cut trees, that we're not going in that direction. And so I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that or add any additional comments. I know Councillor Lauren, you had your hand up still.
Maybe at this point we take a step back and we go, okay, we want to lead by example. Let's create an internal policy for the township that on our properties we have to have certain restrictions. If we're going to cut a tree, we have to plant 1 or 2 trees, or 3 trees. Or for every one we cut, whatever that ratio is, I think is important. And we create, as part of that, an education program for the residents that if you cut a tree in your property, then you should be replacing it, and encourage that replacement and not threaten with fines and permits and stuff like that on their own property at this point in time. I think we can lead with our own policy for our land, and then create an education program, and that's where I would say that we get the input of the committee. And then yes, I believe the committee has been all over this tree bylaw for many years. And I wasn't suggesting to throw it back to them just for argument's sake and just say, here, start back fresh again. It was more, if staff was going to come back with another draft of it, to go to that committee first with an updated draft, get their comments on the updated draft, and then bring it back to council. But in this circumstance, I think maybe the policy is an internal policy. Maybe it's not even a bylaw. It's an internal policy for our own property, with an encouragement for an education program for private residences.
So, Councillor Owen, that would certainly satisfy my side of things, where I'd like to give some certainty to residents, and maybe we develop and lead by example here at the municipality, as you're alluding to. And then from there, the education piece comes along, and maybe we have programs that work where if I, as a resident, want to cut a tree but would like to do something good about it, maybe there is an opportunity to donate a tree somewhere or through someone, and then municipality can somehow give it away. I think I'm happy with that direction. Other members of council, Councillor Lalonde, I saw you waving your head. Councillor Deacon?
Just because we're leading by example doesn't mean that we can't do both at once. And I would prefer that option.
Okay, that's fair. Councillor Armstrong, where are you at with this?
Yeah, I'll agree with Councillor Deacon.
Okay, so is it fair to, regardless, I think we have to defer this item and it has to come back, because we can't put out a policy on the spot. Monsieur Bourgon?
It can be deferred, but I'm bringing back what exactly?
I thought it was pretty clear what Councillor Lauren and I were saying, and then...
What I've just heard, I heard 2 different things in the last 2
Well,
minutes.
I think this, everyone agrees with what, if I may, I think everyone agrees, or there is certainly an agreement about leading by example piece. So have some sort of policy for the public lands. And is that correct? Do I have that? And so the only addition to that would be as Councillor Deacon and Councillor Armstrong supported, was also have the other side of it, which I'm not clear on, and I was hoping you can bring back to us. So Councillor Deacon, maybe you can clarify that.
Hopefully I can articulate it. So Councillor Armstrong started the discussion with a very simple approach that favors not stringent regulations on whether or not you can cut. but what is your obligation in terms of either planting or compensation when you cut? So I think that that sort of thinking is the type of direction that I was hoping we would give to administration tonight to move forward with that sort of simplistic approach, front yard exclusive or front side, for the experts to take a look at. And hopefully that would alleviate the fears. You can cut your tree any old day, but we hope that you're going to do it once we have a regulation that also it would include notification that that's happening, and either planting and proof that you replanted, or going into a community fund that again would benefit the entire community in increasing and maintaining our urban tree canopy for the decades to come.
Thank you. I think that that clarifies it. Councillor Armstrong, did I have, no? So that side of it clarifies it. The only concern I had around that idea was if we are using some sort of permit where they have to have an approval of some sort, then what's the liability piece? If that's a non-issue, then that's fine. If it's an issue, then we'll have to add that to the discussion when it comes back. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, I have the same liability question, but I also have I have concerns over fees and enforcement. So I'm the one I submitted a bunch of questions that surrounded those two specific things, or fees, I'll say costs, to the resident for the permit process. Enforcement, there were some very broad enforcement criterias that were in that bylaw in terms of access to properties that I don't necessarily agree with. So I think that that definitely would have to be looked at. First piece, I agree with. That second piece, I'm struggling with that aspect of it. I would support some sort of a program where you're allowed to cut, but you should be putting a tree up. But how do you manage that? Like, are we adding and I hate the word, some sort of a makeshift work project for ourselves? Education is the way to go, but how do you manage that process, right? Once trees either start getting cut or not getting cut, and I don't know how that's going to work.
Monsieur Bourgon, so we've clarified that other piece. So I think there's two sides of it. Questions, comments, concerns? And can you have this back next meeting, or just?
Of what I've heard in the last several comments, your councils as a whole seem to tend more towards the option 3 that I did present in my report, of focusing on tree planting, the policy, internal, then work into education and see how it can be reflected on homeowners afterwards.
I don't know that we can put a number on it at this stage, because there's nothing that every councillor has seemed to kind of land on. We were at option 2, and now you're proposing option 3. I think the deferral piece is probably the direction to go here, with an understanding that council does not seem to want to have a punitive bylaw that goes into people's yards, if I may. We are looking at an education process. We're looking at some sort of process where we want to encourage the canopy, maintaining the canopy, so either 1-for-1, maybe some sort of investment around that. But again, if I go back to Councillor Lauren's points around the value of work that this adds to staff versus what the result of it is. I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that we want to increase the canopy and maintain or increase the canopy. I think everyone agrees on that. I think everyone agrees on the fact that we would like to see some policy on our public space around the tree, protecting the tree canopy, so whatever that looks like. And then the last piece is around, on the residential side, the education piece, the tree giveaway piece, and some sort of some sort of, I want to say accountability, but I'm not sure that's the right word, around supporting that canopy for the community as a whole. So I'm not sure what the answer is to that, because I don't think we could all agree on one right now.
So I guess, well, at this point, it's fair to say that the proposed bylaw that was presented to council, that could be pushed aside and will bring more info to council.
I think that's very accurate. Members of council, Councillor Lalonde, then Councillor Deacon.
I just want to emphasize or reinforce a comment that Councillor Deacon made. And I think this is about chances for success as well. I think we should try, to the extent that it's possible, to point to the front yards of homes where that canopy is seen for the most part before any other. And to the point of, with all the development going on, people's backyards are of a very small size, and once you put a balcony in there and a tiny little herb garden, you don't have any room left for anything. God forbid you should want a wading pool for your kid. I don't know where you'd put it. So, but I think the front yard is the place, and I think if we're able to convince or educate and convince and influence to the extent that it's on the front of the property that we have a keen interest, we'll leave you alone, we'll leave you to your backyards, as small as they are, that we accomplish a couple things here. We grow the canopy, but we make it clear to residents that, you know, those backyards that they have, they're theirs to do with as they see fit.
All right. In the spirit of a great debate, and we've had a great discussion, I appreciate all members of council's differentiating different point of views. It's always refreshing to see this happen at this table, so very much appreciated. Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Godin, we're leaving you with kind of an open book, but slightly kind of towards the end of the chapter, at the end. And I'm just wondering if there is a clear direction if we defer this.
Merci, Mr. Masso. I think what council is looking for is quite clear. Where there's a lack of clarity is whether we want to have an official bylaw where we can enforce it, or if we just want to focus on public education. So I think we can leave tonight with that and prepare a report to council. It might look a lot like what it does right now, but it will give council time to reflect and make a decision on that. We'll probably remove option one and just focus on the options that have been put on the table, so that council can decide, are we enforcing and are we having a permit system, or are we just going to be focusing on on the permit, on the education, and on our own properties, and actively encouraging residents to take care of the tree canopy.
Okay, so we are going to vote on this separately, and we're, yeah. Okay, moving along then. Thank you. Moving on to item H. The council received report ISPW 2025-09 dated May 12th, 2025, and approved the requested funding to repair McDonald Road and Forest Road. Monsieur Bourgon, before I give this to you, it's my understanding that DST, double surface treatment, should generally last 10 to 15 years, correct?
Yeah, that's correct, Mr. Mayor. 10 years would be typical for this type of road structure.
Okay, so, and this is only 6, so I was just wondering, were there any issues around drainage or anything like that with this particular one? Is this something that we're going to be able to look into properly to ensure that we optimize the value of this DST?
Yes, so really, typically, if it would be just the surface itself, it would be repaired with our operational budget. But in this case, the sub-base already actually went up to the surface. So donc la terre, dans ce cas-ci, la glaise, l'argile a monté à la surface. Donc on doit faire une excavation du chemin en entier pour pouvoir enlever ce sol qui est maintenant contaminé là, comme la base du chemin est maintenant affectée. Donc c'est de refaire la structure complète de la rue dans ces endroits-là. So when we did the surface treatment, in those years, we did the conversion from gravel to surface treatment. We did that intervention at several spots where we knew it was happening every spring. Those locations, it's the first time happening. So we want to make sure that we get it addressed so we can maximize the life cycle of that road afterwards.
Okay, so just a clarification, but do you believe that there is a drainage issue around there that's causing this premature kind of?
We don't believe so. Unfortunately, those soft spot does happen. Sometimes, like, you could have the best drainage on your ditch. It just happened to resurface anyway.
Okay.
So we just want to make sure we can address it properly so it doesn't come back in every spring moving forward.
Merci. Conseiller Lauren?
Yeah, I just have one comment to make in terms of the financial implication. And it's the second paragraph of financial implication. I think we have it written in reverse. And I say that because we shouldn't be counting on surplus money to do the project. So to me, it should say the administration plans to finance the repairs using the asset management reserve. However, should a surplus be available, then that would be used to cover off the cost of the project up to the maximum amount available. And the rest will be covered off through the asset management reserve. I think we've got it in reverse. We shouldn't be approving a project based on a potential surplus. We have to have a plan. It's asset management reserve, and if surplus, we're directing staff to use that surplus piece.
I think that's a fair
That's-
comment, yeah. I think that's a fair comment. As a general, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Godin, for the surplus, it is council that votes what we do with the surplus anyways, right? Am I wrong in that?
Merci, Mr. Mayor. So you're not wrong. The way it's written here, what it's saying is that if the infrastructure department has a surplus, we would allocate it automatically to this project. So the report that we would be bringing to council at year end would like that transfer would be done already. So there'd be less surplus to allocate elsewhere, right? Because we're planning to allocate it here.
So that would be any surplus specific to that department is what you're saying. But normally, in practice, when we have a surplus, when it comes to us as a surplus,
Yep.
it is a council that makes the decision.
Yep.
So preemptively making that decision here, you're saying is okay because it's specific to the department's surplus? Is that what you're explaining, or?
I mean, it would be okay to allocate a portion of the general surplus as well. It's just, we don't know if it's going to be there. So to Councilor Lawrence's point, it's not a good plan, but there's still a plan because there's still that contingency, right? There's still that asset reserve that's there for.
That should be
if
the
it's needed.
priority, yeah.
Which we prefer not to touch, given that we know there's a shortfall in our infrastructure investments. So we're trying to catch up on that. So we try to not go into those reserves if we don't need to. So that's why we wrote it that way. At the end of the day, I understand your point, and it's maybe we can take that comment into, I can share that comment with the finance department as well, and we can look to word that differently in the future. But the way we've written it here and the way we're presenting it, we would automatically use the surplus to finance this, and if we need to, we'll go into the asset management reserve. Versus I think the way you said it kind of would have done the same thing. We're planning to use the asset management reserve unless we do have a surplus, in which case we'll use it from there. So I think we're saying the same thing, but I understand the messaging that the report is saying here.
Councilor Lauren?
Yeah, we're saying the same thing, only differently, but I can't approve it the way it's written. Me personally. I need an absolute direction where the money's coming from, which is asset management reserve. Surplus, if there's a surplus, will replenish the asset management reserve up to the total cost of the project. That, to me, is how we should be doing it. If you're asking me to approve it based on the surplus and then asset management, I can't do that.
Councilor Lauren, are you asking to separate this item?
I will ask to separate that then. Yes, thank you.
All right, let's take a pause for the cause. We've been going at this for an hour and a half. It's 7:30. We'll reconvene at 7:40. Thank you. Moving to, so item H has been removed. We're moving to item I, correct, Madame Camille Lafemme? Oui. Alors, item E, that council receive report ISSW 2025-01 dated May 12th, 2025, and approve the proposed bylaw to award a contract and authorize the entry into an agreement with Coalwater Excavation, Inc. for the stormwater sewer reconstruction on Notre Dame Street for $2,356,568.79 plus $41,475.61 equals $2,398,044.40. This amount includes a 1.76% of non-refundable HST, and that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the agreement. First of all, merci beaucoup for the open house, Monsieur Bourgon. It was extremely well conducted. There was quite a few residents there. I know Councillor Armstrong and myself were present. It was great to see. There were some good questions. And so it was nice to see that. And I was really pleased to see at some of the direction we're moving in terms of some of the ideas, in terms of once Notre Dame is reconstructed, i.e. the bike path, pedestrian path that we had talked about. So that's very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing more plans on that. I would just caution that because this is a major throughway, residents that live alongside Notre Dame obviously were very concerned, but I think this concerns all our residents. And so we need to really ensure that communication on this is as wide-reaching as possible. So using any means that we can to make sure that residents are aware of this major undertaking over the next 2 years. So I just wanted to make sure that we highlight that communications piece. Anything to add from your end, Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So no, besides that tonight, the report in front of council, it's to award the first contract, the first portion of the sewer reconstruction. What we did back during the winter pre-qualification, and the direction of that pre-qualification was to shorten the list to 6 contractors. So basically only those 6 that qualified will receive the bid forms and will carry throughout the full construction, only those 6 businesses will receive the bid form of the portion of work that's being allocated. So today in front of council is the phase 1, which start near the M&M in Embrun and all the way to, we can say Blais, but the storm sewer itself, it stops just past La Palme Street.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments, members of council? Councilor Orr.
Yeah, 2 things. So the first one, because it's fresh in my mind, you just mentioned it. You said that you pre-qualified 6, you sent it to 6, but only 4 bid for this section here. A, do we know why the other 2 didn't bid? And B, if we know why they didn't bid, why would we continue to include them going forward?
Mr. Bourgon.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So first question, we don't have an exact why, as they didn't provide a bid, but we are in the process of inquiring, are you still interested of bidding in a future phase? Is it because of timing issue for this time around? Because obviously there was other businesses that would have qualified for that shortened list. So if one of those 2 decide to retract their name, well, we'll be able to open the door to the next one on the list. So so our PM and our engineering firm is currently working on that pieces right now.
Okay.
Follow up?
Well, the second question.
Sorry.
Just, you said it's the first phase and whatnot, and this contract's worth $2.5 million. But it says the township's portion, but then you said the construction contract will be shared 50-50 with the United Counties. So is 50% of the 2.5 what we're paying? Or are we paying the full 2.5 and the project was actually 5 million? Like, what am I missing here?
Mr. Bourgon.
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So in combined budget, so the township and the county, we have 5 million. So what we're awarding tonight, it's 50-50. So our portion will be just a little bit over like $1.2 million.
That's correct. Does that make sense, Councillor Lauren? From your
Yeah,
end?
the 5 million, it's for the construction of other phases as well.
Yes, for the entire
For
project.
the entire part, and we have, we will be, we already presented to council, there's another 5 million combined from us and the county for next year, for the entire construction.
Alors, on parle d'un projet de 10 millions en tout, c'est ça que
10
vous me dites?
millions, dont 10 millions dans
Sur la-
ce qu'on a budgété. Puis là, présentement, dans le fond, on donne le contrat là, de un quart.
OK.
du
Sur le
montant
10
total.
millions, on parle de 10 millions en tout, c'est-à-dire 5 millions décomptés 5 millions de la municipalité. OK. Monsieur, Councillor Lawrence, sorry.
Sorry, follow up on that. This will be for Monsieur Godin and Mr. Dagenet then, is in this financial implication, I think we need to be clearer that this contract that is being awarded tonight, the financial implication is 1.25 million, not 2.5 million, which is the total cost of the contract that is being awarded. Because nowhere was that clear to me, and now I'm understanding that, yes, it's a 50-50 project, and you say it's 50-50, but you don't say that our portion of this contract is 1.25 million, and that's what we're awarding tonight. Because under this, I would say that I'm awarding a $2.5 million contract tonight, and that our township's portion is 2.5 million.
Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. Yeah, that's a fair comment, so I'll pass it along to the finance team.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments on this? Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, just one thing. As a result of that, and I agree with Councillor Lawrence's comments completely, I didn't understand it until he just asked the question. We'll have to amend the bylaw because the bylaw says the proposal received from cold water excavation in the amount of $2,398,044.40, but that's our contract, according to my reading of the bylaw.
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So that's correct. We are awarding a contract. It's a contract, it's a
joint
township, but we're charging the counties afterwards.
That's correct. So the
it's
contract,
not, Craig Street was the perfect example. We did the same way. Contract was under the township, and we charged the UCPR afterwards.
yeah, and counties has agreed to pay because it is their road. Councillor Armstrong, follow up?
Is that documented anywhere? Do we have a contract or anything with the counties on that?
Monsieur Bourgon?
Merci, Monsieur Mayor. So, yeah, so it's in, they have the approved budget.
It is an approved budget at counties that they are paying for 50% of this project.
Okay, it's on the county.
Yes,
County's
at
already
the county
passed
side. Yes,
an
yes.
appropriate bylaw.
That's
Okay,
correct.
that's fine.
Councillor Lauren?
So then I'll rephrase what I said earlier then. I think then the financial implication should read, we are awarding a $2.5 million contract, of which 1.25 million is being billed back to the United Counties of Prescott-Russell as part of their 50% share of this contract. I just think it needs to be specific and not just, we're sharing 50-50 and whatnot. So based on what we just heard now, I think that's how it should be presented in the financial implications on a going forward basis. It's not just for this project, but for any project that we have shared costs.
So Councillor Lauren, just confirming what you're asking for is that they spell out the amount and not just the saying 50-50. So spell out the amount that counties has agreed to pay for it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Monsieur Bourgon, Monsieur Godin, does that make sense on your end? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Any other comments on this? Thank you, members of council. Moving to item J, a stormwater annual performance report. That council received a report ISSW 2025-02 dated May 12, 2025, and acknowledge receipt of the stormwater annual performance report. I see no new failures in 24. I see there are ongoing issues related to pond cleanouts carried over from 2023. Monsieur Bourgon, anything to add? And can you just comment on the timeline for those pond cleanouts. Do you have anything more?
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. So we don't have a definite time frame, but from our last budget, there's operational money available for the team to make those adjustments. So throughout the summer and fall, we'll be tackling those issues.
So do we expect to be caught up for next year when we get to next year, or?
There's likely gonna be some leftover for to next year.
Okay.
Just by increasing costs. So there's likely gonna be still leftover maintenance to catch up on. We
Okay.
need to keep in mind that some of those maintenance weren't done for so long. So we're playing catch up at this point.
Okay, any issues related to these ponds not getting cleaned out in time? Long-term issues?
It's hard it's hard to predict at this time. Now that it's part of our budget. We have a team. We have now a staff that's doing all those monitoring. So we're basically doing what we can to catch up.
But there is no risk
No.
for Township or its residents?
No, we're well, and that's the goal from the report as well. So it's to report of where we're at, what needs to be done.
Okay. Councillor Lauren?
I think the bigger question is twofold. One, how do we get caught up and what will it take from a budgetary perspective? Do we have to hire people? Do we have to bring in another firm? Like, what do we need to do to get caught up? And B, what do we need to do to maintain going forward? We can't always be playing catch up, right? So I think we need to have a plan to get caught up, and we need to have a plan to maintain. And I think, at least for me sitting up here, I think we need to understand what that is from a budgetary perspective and get it done.
Monsieur Bourgon, I would agree on that, except that if there is no risk, and it's just taking longer and it will get done eventually, then I'm not sure I want to spend more money on it
No,
if
but-
there is no risk
But it's
associated.
certainly something we can bring back to council.
Okay, perfect.
As at least at the bare minimum information purposes, and then a decision can be made at this point.
Okay.
At that point, I should say.
Absolument. Merci. Autres commentaires des membres du conseil? Non, merci. Item K, that council receive report PR 2025-06 dated May 12, 2025, and approve one, an additional ad hoc grant in the amount of $250 to the Terry Fox Foundation to support their event, Embrun Russell Terry Fox Run, to be held on September 14th, 2025. I believe the ad hoc edition, Madame Guittard, please correct me if I'm wrong, relates to the 45th anniversary of the Marathon of Hope. And so they are doing a little bit more than what they typically do for, which they do a lot, by the way. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that they're adding in terms of doing some distance markers and stuff like that to encourage. Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. That is correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments, members of council? No? Fantastic, thank you. We'll move ahead to item I, Russell Station Trail and Edie Park Phase 1 construction approval. That council receives report PR 2025-07 dated May 12, 2025, and approve one, the proposed bylaw to award the contract for Phase 1 of the Russell Station Trail Edie Park project to Cornwall Gravel Company Limited, and authorize entering into an agreement for the construction work at a cost of $353,795.50 with a 10% contingency, so $35,379.55, bringing the total to $396,024.53, including 1.76% non-refundable HST, and 2, to proceed with the award to Cornwall Gravel Company Limited, funded through the Parks and Recreation Development Charges Reserved, and 3, that the mayor and clerk are authorized to sign the agreement. So based on my understanding, Madame Guittard, and I'll give you the floor in a second, this was not accounted for in our 2025 budget. However, the money for this is available because it was collected through DC or DC reserves. And so although it was not budgeted, it is available in our reserve. Is that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that is correct.
Okay, Madame Guitar, anything else to add on this?
Well, I think we've been waiting for that one for a while, so we're finally there. It was a very long process. So we were successful with some of the bidders, like you saw in my report. So we will be able to do the parking lot with that money, those funds. The parking lot, all the equipment, like drainage and all that, that jazz underneath. And the lighting also will be done. And we will also pave the whole pathway that will go from the parking underneath the hydro line and then to the future location of the play structure and the splash pad and a potential gazebo. So this will all be done this year.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, just from the location, will there be parking or access from Gamble Drive? Because I can foresee residents wanting to come in and park there, perhaps not so much on Solid X Place because that's a dead end, but certainly from Gamble Drive. Will there be any issues with that, or do we foresee anything there?
Madame Guitar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Well, I can tell you the main reason for this park development and to build a parking lot was because we had no vehicular access within the subdivision. So I'm not aware if Gamble Drive allows parking on the street, but I think the parking lot is, the whole purpose of that parking lot is to have people park there instead on all the streets. And Edie was really not a street that we wanted people to be parking on.
That's correct.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lauren?
Yes, now that this parking lot is going to be done, and, I've been pushing for this park to be done for the last few years, and it's always been held up by the parking lot until we can get the play structures in and ultimately the splash pad. The tennis courts look like they're going there, and whatnot. My frustration is why this wasn't included in the budget process, right? I understand the money's there, the money's available, and it would have no impact on our budget. But how this was not included in that budget process, knowing that this park was on the radar, and that was the one thing that was holding it up, was the actual parking, I think was a miss in our budget process. And when I seen it, it frustrated me. So I'm just making the comment that, we need to make sure that when we have our projects, that they're all accounted for at budget time so that we can know what's going on.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Deakin.
Yeah, I had some questions from local residents about the planning and the different stages. So just trying to understand the rationale on moving forward with the designs for the parking lot. I don't believe that we have the designs for the actual assets of the park. And, the things that folks really get excited about in terms of the playground, the splash pad, tree cover. I'd just like to better understand the different stages of how a project like this takes shape and why, in this case, the parking is the first thing to go.
Sure. Madame Guitar, I believe the parking provides the access. Otherwise, there was a challenge on the access, but I'll let you explain for Councillor Deakin the
Yep.
stages.
Thank you,
Elsie?
Mr. Mayor, members of council. So yes, the parking was, the purpose of the parking was to allow people to be accessing all the amenities in the park on a safe way. And unfortunately, like I mentioned, within the subdivision, there's no vehicular access. When the subdivision agreement was signed many, many years ago, this was not in the plan. So unfortunately, when we kind of realized that, it was too late. The subdivision agreement was all signed up and all the plans were done. So we cannot undo this. And then The consultant that we hired is the one that did all the site plan. We went through the site plan application, the municipal site plan application for the review of the whole property. So if you look at the C01, I did include all the plans with the report, and all the amenities are mentioned on that specific plan. So you'll see the trail that brings you to the playground, to the gazebo, and then the splash pad. And then you will see the parking lot from the 80th Street with the 4 pickleball courts. Yeah, that's the one, exactly. So you see at the bottom, you have your parking lot, okay? So you had your access from Edie, that brings you to the parking lot. Then you have your 4 pickleball courts, your 1 tennis court. And then you got all the system of the trail, the pathway. The pathway will be paved. This brings you up there where you're at the left, at the bottom, yeah, that one. That's the play structure area. On the other side, it's a potential gazebo. And then on the top, that's your splash pad.
Merci, Madame Guittard. Can you just elaborate the steps after this parking lot's done? What's next?
So
When
we're
is that going to happen, and so on?
We're hoping next year to be paving the parking lot and do the pickleball courts and the tennis all at the same time, because obviously we want to try to maximize the paving contract, and then install the playground structure. We'll see about the splash pad, because like you, council, will recall, the splash pad was a council strategy, so it was financing itself year after year. So we'll see with the finance director if this is doable also next year.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Deacon?
Yeah, thank you. When I was looking at this, it looked like a muffler and a nervous system to me, so I appreciate you walking me through
I would
that.
hope it's the cost of a muffler.
So is there funding to be adding tree cover as well? Or is that something that still needs to be discussed at budget time?
For trees?
Yeah, Madame Guittard.
So I know we do work with infrastructure for the budget, for the trees. We have, I believe, $31,000. So definitely we could look into planting some trees.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lauren.
Yeah, this is for Mr. Godin. I thought we had already resolved to building a splash pad in Russell. And so that the fund, that we would have the funds available for that. So I'm concerned that there's potential thought of we won't have any money for that, or we won't have enough money. I thought we had built that plan already and had that in place, that we could have built this year or last year had we had the parking lot done.
Monsieur Godin?
All right, merci, Monsieur Maire. So there was a plan that was initiated a few years back, I think, which was, I think, I don't remember the value, but it's to put a certain amount into reserve for this particular project every year for, I don't recall if it was 7, 8, 9, or 10 years, but we're still going through that. So there is some money in reserves there. And it is still possible to build it, even though it might not be fully financed yet. We could borrow from reserves, but I think that's where Madame Vital referred to working with the Director of Finance just to make sure that's well planned out and that the cash flow considerations are looked at.
But I don't want that to be a prohibitor of moving forward with the project. Like the funds are being reserved for, we're not waiting till all the money's available to do it. The plan was to do it and have those funds pay that whatever loan or reserve back for those funds, correct?
Yep, and that's still what we're anticipating to bring to council.
Okay. Because I keep getting many different residents asking about the play structure in that area, the splash pad, and we keep waiting year after year after year. And I know that this has been a long time coming for this area. I hope you misspoke a moment ago, Madame Guital, when you said that they're paving next year, not this year?
We're
Madame
paving the
Vital.
parking next year. This year will be left in granular for this year. We're paving the pathway but we're going to be, because we want to do the tennis and the pickleball courts, so we'll be paving the parking and those two amenities next year.
And at the same time, are we going to be able to put the play structure in
Next year,
next year?
yeah. Yeah,
And hopefully the splash
splash
pad
pad.
if,
yeah,
okay, when do those decisions get made? At budget?
yeah.
Okay. I'd like that focused this year, Mr. Godin. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, Conseiller Lalonde?
Just interested, so we're proposing to award the contract now for the work that, are they going to start the ground level work this year?
This is the
ahead of
parking.
the paving of next year? That was the plan?
Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So tomorrow, we will advise the contractor that he got the contract.
Yeah.
So we'll do the kickoff meeting and then get the work schedule, and we're hoping everything will be completed by the year end.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving to item M, that council receives report PR 2025-08 dated May 12, 2025, and 1, approved to increase the budget by $41,750 financed by the Parks and Recreation Development charges, and 2, approve the proposed bylaw to award a contract and to authorize the entry into an agreement with Expedition Management Consulting, Inc. for the consulting services related to the Parks and Recreation Department Master Plan 2025-2026 for $91,750. This amount includes a 1.76% non-refundable HST, and that the mayor and the clerk are authorized to sign the agreement. This is a much higher amount than was originally anticipated, but tenders were approved. Madame Guittard, is the scope of the project still the same? Has it changed? And did any of that increase the cost of this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I think it's a mix of everything. Obviously, the department is way bigger than it was 10 years ago. That's one thing. Second thing, inflation. Just for example, we paid $25,000 the last master plan, and now it is almost $100,000. That's in 10 years. But of course, the scope of work is different. We've a lot more diversified. So, and I think so. If we want to have a good result, so we made sure that everything was mentioned in the scope.
Excellent. Definitely an important document that needs to be created to guide the Parks and Recreation Plan for years to come. Questions, comments, members of council? Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, my first question is, have we ever worked with Expedition Consulting Management Limited before?
Madame Guittard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. No, we have not.
Follow up?
Yeah, well, the next question is
Okay.
on a different issue. Do we, and it's probably for Mr. Godin to answer, do we have any other similar consulting contracts where we have budgeted for several years ago that will be upcoming in the next little while? And have we had a significant inflation factor built into those? Because yes, 100% over budget is a fair bit in the last 2 years and a bit, but still, that's, I mean, it's hard to budget for that, and I'm worried if we're going to find other contracts like this in the future that we're going to get caught.
Yeah, so I think this one is different in the sense that we had planned to have it before, so it was a budget amount that was transferred. But I think normally when we plan or budget for these types of reports, we do it on the year of, Monsieur Godin, correct? So we have a pretty clear idea of the general cost of it, correct?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So that's correct. So most of our projects were budgeted when we did the budget exercise in November. So it does happen that some projects don't get done throughout the year and then get carried over. The exact amount of projects and the value of those, if there are more than this one, I'm not sure. I would have to consult with the directors and director of corporate services, but we can circle back to you for that for an answer.
Thank you. Councillor Lauren?
I think this is a good example of what we need to be taking into consideration in our development charge bylaw process, because if this is funded through development charges and other consulting type of master plans down the road that we're thinking of, where we're thinking they're going to cost 50, 60,000, they may cost 100, 120,000. We need to make sure that those costs are not borne on the taxpayer versus the growth, right? We want to make sure growth pays for growth. We keep saying that. This is an example that we need to make sure that we're budgeting accordingly to charge properly.
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. Councillor Deacon.
Yeah, just to that point, am I understanding that this is not paid for by development charges? I do believe that DCs do cover studies quite often.
That's correct. I think what Councillor Lauren was referring to is the fact that the escalation and that we take that into account in this DC study. But Monsieur Godin, this particular amount is...
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So yes, this particular amount is funded through DCs, even if it is over and above what was in the study. But I think it still is important to have that indexing factor or the projected inflation factor when we're building those project lists in the DCs to make sure we're charging enough and we're collecting enough to fund them.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, my last comment is it's refreshing to see that the group that scored the highest in each one of the envelope processes came out to actually be the lowest price in the recommendation. Just goes to show you that they've seen exactly what we're looking for and are going to be able to perform. I mean, 94.5% rounded up, 95% score, I think is phenomenal. And to be the lowest score as well, or the lowest price,
Yeah.
I think shows that we're going to get value for the cost. So,
Thank you, Councillor Lauren. I certainly am excited to see this master plan move forward. I think it'll be a great benefit to the community. Any final comments on this? No? Thank you. Moving to item N, Strategic Plan Progress Update and 2025 Business Plan Overview Report, CAO 2025-03. That council receives the report dated May 12, 2025 for information purposes. There's a lot of information within that report. I for one, really appreciate that we've returned to kind of the annual business plan process. I think this gives council a much better understanding of what is on the table, what's being expected, how we're doing. And so I appreciate us going back to that. I really liked that before we took that away. So very happy to see that. Anything to add, Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. Donc, so this report essentially provides an update on the progress made in our 2023-2026 strategic plan. And it also gives you an overview of the 2025 business plan. So these documents reflect the collective work of all the departments over the past year and the priorities that we've set out for the year ahead. So I'm really proud of the dedication and collaboration shown across the organization. So I'd like to thank all my colleagues here at the table with me as well as their teams. Like you said, it's a long list. There's a lot of information there. We're happy to answer any questions you may have tonight, and feel free also to reach out to either me or any director if you have any questions beyond tonight on any of these particular items.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Godin. Questions, commentaires, membres du Conseil? Seeing, hearing none, I think it's a great report. There's no questions. Wow. Oh, sorry.
no.
Councillor Deacon.
Sorry. I was just flipping through different documents here. Under the strategic objective to prioritizing innovation and collaboration, there's a mention of performance measurement system. And I'm just wondering, it seems to focus on asset management. Sorry, I'm not speaking into the mic. It seems to focus on asset management in particular. I'm just wondering if there's an HR component to that as well. The progress update speaks to asset specifically.
Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Monsieur Maire. So yeah, the progress that was highlighted for over the period of the last 12 months was focused on asset management. But yes, there are some efforts being done on the HR side, and which you will find a few items in a business plan that touch on that. But the high level, the concrete progress that we had to report this term around was really focused on the asset management plan, which was a big aspect of that.
Thank you.
And I did have just a comment as well. I wanted to say that I wish that there was a take your resident to work day here in the township. So
Be a
that
busy
resident,
place.
I want everybody who lives here, who has a business here, who works here, to see just the amount of work and the dedication and the commitment and the professionalism of staff that's reflected in reports like this. I think that there is often a divide between folks who aren't as close to their local government and those who are actually working in it, serving the public every day. And reading through these pieces, the word that came to mind is humbling. Just the extent of work that's being done. So I wanted to say I think we should have a take your resident to work day so that this sort of information gets out there more and more, and that appreciation for our local government is there.
Thank you very much. I entirely agree with you. All right. Moving along, item O. So the next two pieces coming to the table are interesting because they are very related, but ironically coming from two different committees of council, which I find really exciting because clearly our residents, which found these committees or which are the base of these committees, are thinking along the same lines. And so item O, recommendation 2025-01, that council receives this recommendation dated February 18th, 2025 from the Community Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee with respect to the development of an accessible beginner hockey program for adult women in the township. So it's interesting to see when you look at the disparity of ice time opportunities at this stage. I'm assuming it's based on demand, so I certainly strongly agree with this. Anything to add on this particular recommendation, Councillor Deakin?
Yeah, if I may, I was contacted by Sarah Lynch, who brought this to the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee as a new hockey player, over a year ago. And she had wanted to work on figuring out ways to grow access to ice and ice equity for women. And I just want to commend her for sticking with it for the past year, putting together the presentation, running surveys with local women who have shown an interest, coming to both the DEI committee as well as the Parks and Rec committee to make her case and to show what she's finding, and also proposing solutions, which is always great to receive from residents as well. So I will be asking to have this pulled for an amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Okay, I'll plead new counselor here again, if I can do that for a little bit yet. Can somebody just give me a really quick summary of how ice time is allocated, and along that line, how any new group gets their name in for ice time allocation, etc.?
Councillor Lauren, go ahead.
I'm not going to answer your question, but I just want to make sure we're focused on the right aspect of this one and the next one that came from the Parks and Rec Committee. And it truly is, in my opinion, two separate things. Ice time allocation and the creation of a beginner program put on by the township. So the ice policy is set by council through staff on how ice is allocated, and there's we can discuss. I think Madame Guital is going to come back to council with that policy now with the new complex coming. So you're going to get a crash course on ice allocation policies, and you're probably going to get many people contact us saying how they're either happy with it or not happy with it. Very soon, yes, and then some. But in terms of these recommendations, I think I had this discussion with Councillor Deakin as well, and we really the focus of that report was twofold, or the recommendation was twofold. It was, yes, there's with the new complex, we need to ensure that there's some equity in that, but we also need to make sure that the township is creating a program which they do not have today. And that is a program designed for adult women, beginner program for hockey. And that's where the township will go out and hire somebody to put that program on. ICE will be allocated to that program because it's a township initiative, or administrative initiative, and it'll be based on sign up, right? So if there's a demand, and from the presentation, there's going to be significant demand for this program, and then it's going to turn over I'll call it a term, September to December, January to April. Every term, you're going to get new people coming into the program or people staying in the program with the ultimate objective, I believe, and Councillor Deakin can correct me if I'm wrong, is the creation of a league at some point in time from a grassroots level. And that league will then need to get into the queue, if you will, for ICE allocation. And we need to understand that that's coming, and we need to probably carve out that hour or 2 hours of ICE per week in each arena, or now that there's a complex coming, specifically at a reasonable time for them to actually have their, well, I'll call it shinny hockey, but their league or whatnot. So that will address as part of the policy. But I think the recommendations are directing staff to create a program for a beginner program. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Madame Guiton, anything to add on that in terms of policy process? But, I mean, it is around budget time, and it's, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So definitely, yes, the allocation policy will be reviewed with the upcoming complex because we'll have an extra ice pad, obviously. And so we'll have to take into account all those different demands. Right now, the present allocation policy that we have, users have until the end of May, I believe, to get in their requests. And obviously, for the last 22 years, I think, the ice has been really complete. At one point, we did secure some time for a ladies' team in Embrun, and then girls' hockey came in also. So there were some substantial changes done in the schedule in the last 20 years. But obviously, trends have changed, new interest. So we want to work towards that for the complex, obviously. So we will have to make some changes to the policy. I think the first thing is always to work towards our residents, first of all, and the minor sports, and then we'll have our local adults. So I think this will not change for the policy, but the way we allocate hours, probably that will. Sorry.
Thank you. In terms of this fall and this coming season, is there an opportunity to fit in this request where we, for the development of or development program for women?
I could check with the program, the recreation programmer to see if there is some potential there. We already have an hour for ladies, and 1 week is a house league, and the other week is competition, because they don't mix anymore, and we only had an hour. So definitely we could look into it. I can't promise anything, because like I said, it's like just the minor sports have, really exploded in registrations. But I'm not saying no. Definitely we could look into it.
Because I think that's the core of this recommendation anyways, to start with some sort of beginner hockey program for adult women in the township, right? Councillor Lauren? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Lauren.
Oh, yeah. The recommendation was, from my understanding, was clear that it would start with the recreation complex. So that would be for the fall of 2026, not necessarily for 2025. Understanding the fact that there's significant requests that are already in, and given the fact that there are still many pieces of minor sports now that are still buying ice in other municipalities because there's not enough ice in this municipality, which again was one of the reasons why we needed that third ice, right? So I support fully this program, and in fact, I was introduced to this type of a female adult beginner program probably 2 years ago when my daughter moved to the Gloucester Association. I'll call them the hockey moms, were all about, getting into this new, they've always watched their kids play. Now they wanted to get out and learn and try, and they struggled to get ice everywhere. Even in fact, asking me about ice in the township at that point in time. So I think it would be very difficult to fit them in. I mean, if you can, great. And if they're ready to start, just renting ice an hour a week or 2 hours a week, whatever that is, I think it would be great for them to be able to do that. But in terms of the actual the township programming, I think would be in 2026.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I apologize for that
Yeah.
misspeak there. But I guess what I'm looking at here, in terms of beginning program, could be all kinds of different aspects to that, right? From learning to skate, learning to play hockey. And I know myself, my kids who played a lot of hockey at the time, growing up in Montreal, I didn't get to play a lot of hockey. I took a beginner program in Orleans, and there were women and men at that program. So I'm not even sure if that's kind of speaking to that, or whether we're talking about organized league here. And so anyways, to look at, to consider, but definitely with the new complex. Any other comments on this? Okay, moving to item P, recommendation 2025-02, that council receives this recommendation dated April 23rd, 2025, from the Parks and Rec and Culture Advisory Committee with respects to creating a beginner adult hockey program for adult women starting in the fall of 26 to be delivered at the new recreation complex. So we kind of spoke to that. Councillor Lauren?
Yeah, so when it came to the Parks Recreation Advisory Committee, we were essentially supporting the Community Diversity and Equity recommendation to create that program for the fall of 2026. So
Great.
we were in full agreement. We had a great presentation. The room was, I'm going to exaggerate a little bit, but the room was packed with people supporting that initiative. So I think it was great to see that support from the members of the committee when they look back over their shoulder. And there was a special guest in the audience that I'll speak to at item 20 later.
All right, great. Thank you. Any other comments on this item? No. Moving to item 12, reports from an investigator or the ombudsman. We have none. Item 13, notice of motions. We have none. Item 14, question period on meeting of the day. Any questions from, so questions have to be in relation to items on the agenda. Before asking the question, please fill in your name and address on the sign-in sheet. If you wish to receive a response from a member of council or staff, please leave a phone number or email on the sheet and state only your name before asking your question. Before you do ask your question, just a disclaimer that by asking your question during the council meeting, you are consenting to be part of the live broadcast and the official public recording of these proceedings. La parole est à vous.
I have a few questions on two agenda items.
Okay.
I'll try and be quick, not to
No,
make it
take your
too long.
time. No problem.
With regards to the ED Park, if we can call it that, there was mention that this year the pathway only would be paved, right? I want to understand what is meant by the pathway, because I don't understand the design.
muffler?
The muffler either. Does it include the access paths from the streets in that subdivisions, like Gamble Drive? Because there are access paths that will bring it. I'm also a member of EAC, and we have encouraged active transportation. We've talked about it through the transportation master plan, and we've added, we've asked that it be added that there is cycling and bike,
Okay.
rather than just using your cars if you're to go and use this park. So I want to understand what is the plan for paving the paths, and I don't know if the pond has been transferred to the municipality that leads to the park,
Okay.
because half of it is not paved. So that's my question, what's included in that contract
Merci.
and what is being paved?
Merci. Alors peut-être, je ne sais pas, Monsieur Bourgon, Madame Guittard.
Well, I can, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I can answer for the pathways. So the pathway is the pathway that leads underneath the hydro line from the parking lot through the hydro line and then to.
The
like,
subdivision.
The subdivision, like I showed you where the play structure is going to be and the splash pad. We're not doing any other connection to the bike path.
No,
Okay.
not the bike path, but there's access paths from residents. Like in your low, if we have.
Est-ce
the-
qu'on
the-
peut mettre le,
That's
le
usually,
schéma?
I think that's usually the
The
developer
developer?
that does that.
Okay,
It's not
okay.
the township.
That's what I
Yeah.
wanted.
So there are no plans at this stage?
No.
for
No
that.
plans.
That's
Okay.
not from us.
And so I presume it hasn't been transferred then, if it hasn't been done yet. My other question is, you talked about tree planting in that park. Do we have also a plan as to when this will take place? Like you set out the structures and all that we're all looking forward to, but what about trees? So that the kids, once they get to use those, will have some shade and people who want to go there.
Parfait, merci Carole. Madame Guittard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So usually the trees are like the last thing we do when the park is completed. This is also why we would like to have a gazebo to create some shade, or also like those tarps that we've looked into buying for another park, because obviously those trees will be planted. Some of them are, in a fair size, but they still need to grow to create some shade.
So timeline will be 2 years from now, is what you're saying?
Probably, yeah, around, yeah.
So there will not be any trees planted in 2026 around the edge of the park?
Maybe 26, we might be able at the end of 26 in the fall, yeah.
Okay.
My other question relates to the tree bylaw, of course, and we've heard your comments, and also because I'm a member of the committee. In all the recommendation going back to the administration, will the EAC, I'm not sure it was clarified at the end, that will the EAC have a chance to make some comments on it and examine what the plans are, because we would like to be involved.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I think that that was discussed, and I certainly saw that as being the direction from
I just wanna
council.
make sure.
But Monsieur Godin, Monsieur Bourgon, when we were talking about the tree bylaw in terms of getting the environmental committee involved in commenting on what's going to come back, we agree that they will be involved. Right?
And in the education campaign.
Absolutely,
and all-
through the whole.
all the
Yes,
other
yeah,
elements.
absolument,
Yeah,
absolument.
yeah, okay.
Monsieur Bourgon,
Oui, effectivement. Ce qui était moins clair pour l'administration, c'est à quel moment je retourne au comité. Est-ce qu'on consulte le comité avant de revenir au conseil ou l'administration retourne avec une certaine ébauche ou avec une certaine structure avant d'aller au comité?
certainement, de mon point de vue, je pense que ça vaut la peine qu'on aille au comité et qu'on ait déjà un petit peu de feedback du comité avant que ça nous revienne. Membres du conseil, tout le monde d'accord avec ça, je pense que oui.
Okay,
Ok.
thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Carole. Any other questions? No? Okay, great. Moving to item 15, resolutions. So we've got a couple of them. Madame Camille Laflamme, vous allez... alors, on a une motion, notice of motion by Marc Lalonde, USA tariffs on Canadian goods. This was moved by Councillor Lalonde, seconded by Councillor Deacon. And we have to read the motion, Madame Camille Laflamme. Oh, si vous voulez que je la lise?
It's your turn now, it's in resolution mode.
All right. Whereas the United States of America, USA, has placed unjustified tariffs of 25% on Canadian goods, steel and aluminum, and is threatening to add more tariffs on Canadian manufactured automobiles. And whereas trade between Ontario and the USA is very important to our residents and our local economies and requires all levels of government to work together in the best interest of those residents. And whereas according to the data from the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, across Ontario, municipalities are expected to spend between $250 and $290 billion on infrastructure over the next 10 years. and whereas municipalities have treated trade partners equally and fairly in all procurements and in accordance with all established international trade treaties, and whereas the municipalities play a crucial role in the part of the Team Canada approach to combat these unjustified tariffs and support businesses in our procurement of capital and infrastructure program, and whereas there exists trade barriers between Canadian provinces and territories, now therefore be it resolved that the Township of Russell support the Team Canada initiative, and that the Province of Ontario and the Government of Canada provide guidance on how to give preference to Canadian companies while adhering to requirements under the trade agreements, and that the Province of Ontario and the Government of Canada work to remove interprovincial trade barriers to support Canadian companies and supply chains in delivering made-in-Canada options for municipal procurement requirements, and that the Province of Ontario and the Government of Canada provide clarity and direction on the intent and scope of the call to ban USA suppliers from municipal procurement. Be it further resolved that the clerk forward this resolution to the following organizations: Ontario Municipalities, the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Premier of Ontario, the Prime Minister of Canada, our local MP and MPP. That's it? Damn it. Okay, good. And we had a mover and seconder on that. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you very much. I should have a break just for that. All right, item B, other resolutions. So motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments, councils, and committees. I need a mover, a seconder to put it on the table. Moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Deakin. It is on the table. I believe we have a request to separate items G, H, and O. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I need a mover, everyone in agreement with that? Yeah, mover and a seconder to remove items G, H, and O. That's moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Call for the vote to remove those three items. All in favor? Passed. All right. Give me a second here. All right, so a motion that council approve all recommendations listed on the agenda under item 11, reports from departments and council committees, with the exception of items G, H, and O. This is moved by Councillor Lalonde, seconded by Councillor.
We already have a mover, seconder.
Oh, it's already on the table?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Sorry. So I'll call for the vote for all items except those three. All in favor? And passed. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll go back to item G first. Bear with me. That's why I couldn't find it. Suppose 2, 3. Oh, no.
Take your time.
I'm just going to find it. It's right here. There. All right. So item G. Urban tree bylaw. That council received report ISPW 2025-06 dated May 16, 2025, and select option of the report on how to finalize the urban tree bylaw. So this is moved by to put it on the table, correct? Moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. It's on the table. I believe we were moving in a direction to defer. Questions, comments, members of council? So we have a proposal to defer this recommendation. I need a seconder to defer, seconded by Councillor Lauren.
Sorry, I missed the mover.
I was moving it.
Okay, thanks.
So seconded by Councillor Lauren. I call for a vote to defer the recommendation. Before we do that, Monsieur Godin, was there any other direction you wanted around the deferral? Or Monsieur Bourgon, are we comfortable with that?
The only thing, it's going to be hard for staff to predict it's when it's going to come back to council.
I think that's fair for council as long, Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, just, we have Environmental Sustainability Advisory Committee meetings coming up on Wednesday next month, and then it doesn't go until September. So I would not see anything
I agree.
until after the September meeting.
Monsieur Bourgon, I think it's certainly a good idea to start the discussions and start seeing, and maybe at the Environmental Committee Advisory Committee meeting to start having those discussions, what that could look like. But I suspect that it's fair that the deferral would be not till coming back from the summer
fall.
break. That's correct. And I think in that deferral also, I'm not sure how do we voice that or I can't voice the fact that there may not be punitive items on it, but I think it's pretty fair for residents that are watching that council is not interested in some sort of bylaw that seeks to punish residents or to control, what they can and can't do within their own property. But more details will come sometime in the fall. Monsieur Bourgon?
So for our highlights of tonight's meeting that will be published later this week, we'll try to word something in that effect that, like, based on comments and direction from council, it will be re-looked at and coming back to council at a later date.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think the other point I think that's worth mentioning in that update is possibly saying that looking at our own policies on how they can apply on public lands. So, okay, so we have a mover and seconder to defer. I'll call for the vote for the deferral. All in favor? And passed. Thank you, council. Okay, so that was item G. Moving to item H. And that's the, no, there we go. The McDonald Forced Air Repair Report, ISPW 2025, that council received this report dated May 12, 2025, and approved the request for funding to repair McDonald Road and Forced Road. I need to put that on the table. That's moved by Councillor Lawrence, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Questions, comments, members of council, or amendments? Councillor Lawrence.
Can you read the recommendation or the resolution again, please?
For the resolution on item H,
Yes, please.
so that council receive report ISPW 2025-09 dated May 12, 2025, and approve the requested funding to repair McDonald Road and Forest Road.
Okay. So I have no problem with that recommendation. What I want to ensure is that the financial implication is the asset management reserve as the funding mechanism versus the surplus first and then the surplus second, if there is a surplus to pay back the asset management reserve. If that's the understanding, then I will be okay with this. I'm not okay approving it based on the financial implication listed in the report.
So Councillor Lauren, just confirming my understanding, so as long as staff confirms the direction that you're explaining here, you're okay to vote on it as it is presented. Is that correct?
Based on how the resolution is drafted, yes. but the financial implication obviously is the resolution is based on the financial implications. So I just want to make sure that the financial implication is funds are coming from asset management, or sorry, asset management reserve first.
Prioritized asset management.
Yes.
But then, yes, Monsieur Godin?
Merci, Monsieur Maire. So I just want to confirm that I understand. So you'd like for the project to be funded from the asset management reserve, not the surplus? Correct.
I wanted to come from I wanted to state that the funding for this project is from the asset management reserve, and any surplus associated to the infrastructure department be used to repay the asset management reserve.
So it's a direction
Yep.
that's being given. You comfortable with that direction?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep,
that makes
that works.
sense. Members of council,
Because I don't know how I would voice that in an amendment.
yeah, I don't think that, I think we're giving direction from council, and the resolution as it's stated is still fine. Mr. Godin, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest. We do, and Madam Camille, correct me if I'm wrong, but directions are included in the minutes, or they can be included in the minutes, correct? So we can include that in the minutes there. The actual report in the agenda obviously can't change because that was already published, but we can document that way.
Okay.
Okay, members of council, all in favor of that approach? Good, so I will call for the vote as it is presented then. So all in favor? And passed. Thank you very much. Okay, moving to item O, that council receive recommendation 2025-01 dated February 18th, 2025 from the Community Diversity and Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee with respect to the development of an accessible beginner hockey program for adult women in the township. And this is moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Councillor Lauren. It's on the table. Any comments, questions, amendments? Councillor Deacon.
Thank you. I'd like to propose an amendment to the resolution reading that council approve recommendation 2025-01 dated February 18th, 2025. So again, the amendment is switching it from receive to approve.
Okay, we have an amendment on the table. This is seconded by Councillor Lauren, or a question? Seconded? Okay. All right, so we have an amended, we're going to vote on the amendment, so I'll call for the vote. Everyone comfortable with the amendment? Do you need to see it on the screen? We're good. So I'll call for the vote on the amendment. All in favor? Passed, so that the council approve recommendation 2025-01 dated February 18th, 2025 from the Community Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Committee with respect to the development of an accessible beginner hockey program for adult women in the township. And I will call for the vote on the amended version. All in favor? And passed. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Lauren.
Yeah, just, I didn't ask to separate the next one out with the understanding that this one kind of discusses both of the recommendations. So I don't think we need to do it twice.
Okay, that makes sense. I agree. Mr. Godet, makes sense on your end?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right, I think that completes item 15. Item 16, bylaws and attachments. Are there any that need to be removed, Madame Camille Laflamme?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. So motion that council approve bylaws 2025-061 to 2025-065 inclusively for first, second, and third reading as listed on the agenda. And this is moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And passed. Thank you very much, council members. Item 17, new business reports, we have none. Item 18, other business presented by council members, we have none. Number 19, public consultations, hearings, we have none. Item 20, announcements. So I'll start first off by congratulating all the members of the Kin Club for their 23rd, I believe, or 24th, but I think it's the 23rd Pout Masters this past weekend. I had the pleasure of attending on Sunday where we gave out some the prizes. It was great to see. The actual winner of the main prize was I shouldn't say for the prize, but the winner of the best catch was a resident from Sudbury, believe it or not, that came down just for this Postmasters. So it is great for tourism, I could say now. He is related to another resident here from Embrun, but all that to say, I think their numbers were much higher than they were last year, and so it was a great event. They had food, they had a band playing. I know Councillor Deacon was able to make it there as well, so it was a pleasure to see, and it's always great to see the Kin Club and all the efforts they do as part of what they do for our community. Thank you very much. I believe there is an announcement, Councillor Lauren.
Yes, thank you very much. This one brings me great pride to actually announce this. I noticed it today while on a break from work, surfing X or Twitter, whatever it is, and I happened to see a repost from an organization called Next Shift Canada. That's a locally developed program for beginner people in hockey, and they supply people with equipment, people that can't afford to go out and get equipment for themselves or for their kids or whatnot. They've been operating for about 3 years now in the area. It's organized by or led by a gentleman by the name of Mackenzie Janes, or Mac. And I said it had a tie into the O and the P items because he was one of the standing room only crowd that was at the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee presentation in support of the beginner program that we were putting on, and in fact said that he had either already outfitted some beginner players, some beginner adult players, and would continue to support that. His Next Shift program has already in 3 years outfitted over 1,000 people with sporting equipment, and if I do the rough math on that, they outfit one person per day with equipment. They get donations through the community, and in fact, when you hear what I'm going to talk about in a second, they drive all across the area. People leave equipment out front of their house, and they go and pick it up, bring it, get it all cleaned. So what I noticed today was a repost of the fact that Mackenzie Janes has been, and Next Shift Canada has been recommended as a finalist for the NHL Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award. So he's one of 3 finalists in Canada, one being in Edmonton, one being in Calgary, and him being local to the area. I'm just flabbergasted at that item. Like, the work that him and his group do is phenomenal to get people engaged in the sport. So this award, I'll just read the quick press releases. The National Hockey League today announced the 3 Canadian finalists and the 3 U.S. finalists for the annual Willie O'Ree Community Hero Award. This award is given to an individual who, through the sport of hockey, has positively impacted their community, culture, or society. So why am I bringing this up? Is fans are encouraged to vote for their community hero now at nhl.com/O'Ree Award. Voting is open until May 25th, 2025. For the 3rd year now, there will be 2 award winners, one in Canada and one in the U.S. The award winners will each receive $25,000 prize in the form of a donation to be donated to a charity of their choice. The 4 remaining finalists will each receive $5,000 to be donated to a charity of their choice. So there's a link to the bio. Mackenzie is the founder and president of Next Shift Hockey, an organization that provides free equipment to anyone in need. Now it's just started their 4th year. Next Shift Hockey has outfitted more than 1,000 players and more than 200 goalies. and giving all hockey players an opportunity to continue playing without cost barriers. They also provide coaching support as well as health and fitness training programs. And if you go to the actual media release by the NHL, there's a link there to a YouTube thing with his personal profile, and they followed him around and they did a nice little, I think it's about a 5-minute clip with him. So I just wanted to publicly congratulate Mackenzie Mack on this accomplishment, and encourage everyone, if you can, to go and vote for this community hero. I think it's a great, it'll be a great thing for him, great thing for the community, and a great thing for everyone that uses that Next Shift program. So if we can possibly have staff do something with this, whether put it out in a news release or as part of the follow-up on the meeting, just to get that word out there and see if we can get some more people to vote, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Get the community behind that. So we have 13 days left to vote on this. What was that?
Oh, I told Mr. Godin, I sent
Okay.
him the link so he can.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so there's 13 days till for the voting. So if we can get the community behind it, I think it's great. Monsieur Godin?
Oui, merci, Mr. Mayor. So yeah, for sure, I can talk with our communications officer tomorrow morning and get that
Excellent.
publicized.
Fantastique. Autre commentaire d'annonce au niveau du conseil, membre du conseil? Non? Merci. All right, numéro 21, strategic discussion, we have none. Item 22, closed session. So pursuing to Section 239, 3, and 3.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 25, motion to move into closed meeting at the hour of, what time is it? 8:57 p.m. to address matters pertaining to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, SO 2001, Chapter 25, to consider matters relating to 1, update on roles and responsibilities report CS 2025-05, S2B, which are personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees, and 2, D, labor relations and employee negotiations, as was adjusted at the start of the meeting, and 2, to review closed session minutes of the regular council meeting dated April 28th, 2025. And this is moved by Councillor Deacon, seconded by Conseiller Lalonde. I will call for the vote. All in favor? Against? And passed. Yeah. Okay, so we're good. So we are in closed session, and I would like to take like a 7-minute break. Okay, it's been a while.